You did it one
I did a lot.
There are two ways to leave here, either through the door with the deal sign or through this window, and we're on the 29th floor.
When she walked in the office, I was like, you know, she just had, it was just something about her.
Rihanna's story begins on the island of Barbados. Now, at home, things were tense. Her father struggled with addiction, and it created an environment where everyone was on their toes. Arguments between her parents were frequent and intense, and for a child witnessing it all, the emotional weight was crushing. Rihanna was so stressed that she developed sharp headaches so severe that doctors once worried she might have a significant medical problem. Even as a girl, she could tell exactly when her father's mood had shifted and when tension was brewing. Fridays were particularly nerve-wracking because payday meant alcohol, and alcohol meant violence. And no child should ever have to become hyper-aware of the adults in the room just to feel safe. That was her reality. And amid all that, music became the only place where she could breathe. She listened to Mariah Carey, Madonna, Whitney Houston, Bob Marley, and without formal lessons or training, she somehow developed a vocal texture and a tone that stood out. And a hero comes along. Still, singing professionally was not something she openly imagined. Barbados was not known for exporting pop stars, and opportunities in the American music industry were practically imaginary. Even if she dreamed of being on stage, how could a teenager from a small Caribbean neighborhood possibly reach the attention of any major label? It seemed unrealistic, even embarrassing to say out loud. And call it fate or coincidence or some strange combination of luck and destiny intervened. In 2003, a man named Evan Rogers decided to travel to Barbados with his wife for a simple vacation. But Rogers was not some random visitor. He was a highly respected American music producer who had made his name writing and producing for major artists in the music market. His wife was originally from Barbados, and during their stay, word began spreading through the island that there was a teenage girl with a unique voice who should sing for him. Rihanna was part of a trio at the time, singing casually with two classmates, and they arranged for a meeting with Rogers in a hotel. The moment Rihanna stepped into the room, something shifted. Rogers later described it as an intuitive reaction, the kind that experienced producers develop after seeing hundreds of hopefuls and instantly recognizing the rare ones who have that intangible it factor. She was shy, hesitant, barely making eye contact, but she had a quiet magnetism that drew every bit of attention toward her. When she began to sing, something clicked. Her voice wasn't perfect, but it carried a texture that felt honest and immediately memorable. The other girls unfortunately blended into the background because Rihanna's presence was just simply overwhelming. Evan Rogers didn't waste any time. He invited her for follow-up sessions, and as soon as he returned to the US, he reached out to her with an invitation. Would she be willing to travel to America to record professional demos? For Rihanna, the idea was both exhilarating and frightening. She had never lived outside of Barbados. She didn't fully understand how the music industry worked. She didn't know how long she would be away, but she said yes because she had a dream. When she arrived in the United States, she stayed with Rogers and his wife in Connecticut. The environment was peaceful, stable, and focused. She trained in the studio and learned how recording really worked. She didn't have the benefit of vocal coaching or elaborate production. She just had her voice. Rogers and his partner Carl worked with her constantly. She was only 15, balancing schoolwork with studio sessions, flying back to Barbados for exams, and returning to the USA for recording breaks. Still, the producers believed so strongly in her potential that they signed her to their production company, SRP Music Group. Over the next year, they recorded countless demos, experimenting with sound, genres, and stylistic directions. Then in early 2005, they put together a small compilation of songs to send to record labels. Among those tracks was Pon the Replay, a dancehall pop fusion that captured the spirit of her island roots while still feeling fresh and commercial. Labels listened, but one label's reaction would change everything. Def Jam Recordings, freshly restructured and now under the leadership of its new president, JayZ. JayZ was not yet the business titan he would later become, but he was already a powerful figure in hip-hop and a respected voice in the industry. He had seen countless artists rise and fall, and he had learned to distinguish between a catchy song and a true star.
And I don't sign songs, I sign artists.
Okay.
When he heard Pon the Replay, he was conflicted. He loved the song. He thought it was a hit waiting to happen, but he also feared it might be too big for a brand new artist, especially one so young and unknown.
Kid, I was like, that song's too big for her. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, a new artist, when a song is that big, it's it's hard to come back from. So I was a little reluctant.
From his perspective, a breakout single could be both a blessing and a curse. One-hit wonder stories were common. Artists who had one massive track and then disappeared when they couldn't replicate the success. JayZ didn't want to sign someone who would burn bright and then fade. He wanted longevity. But Rihanna's voice on the demo lingered with him. Something about her tone felt different. It wasn't just the song, it was her. He arranged for a meeting. For Rihanna, the invitation to audition for Def Jam was overwhelming. The idea of performing for JayZ was almost paralyzing. When she arrived at the label's New York office, she was so nervous she could barely speak. She waited in the lobby, trembling, cold, and trying not to look as terrible as she felt. When she finally walked into the audition room, she found JayZ, Reid, and other executives waiting for her. Rihanna tried to steady herself, knowing that the next few minutes could alter her entire life. She sang Whitney Houston's For the Love of You, Pon de Replay, and another ballad that Rogers and Carl had written. JayZ observed her closely, her tone, her confidence, the way she held herself, and the way her voice carried emotion, even when she tried to hide her fear. JayZ later said he knew she had something rare, something that could not be taught, and the energy in the room changed. The executives realized that if Rihanna left the building without signing, she could easily sign with someone else the next day. They couldn't risk losing her, so they didn't let her leave. And what happened next became one of the most infamous stories in Def Jam history. It was late, well past office hours, and instead of sending her home, they essentially locked her in the building. They called lawyers and drafted a contract. They kept her there past midnight. JayZ even told her, half joking, half serious, that she could either leave through the door with a signed deal or through the window without one. And they were on the 29th floor.
We signed her that night. We didn't let her leave the office.
Really?
To 3 in the morning.
The message was clear. They wanted her, and they were not going to let her slip away. Rihanna recognized that this was the opportunity her entire life had silently been building toward. She signed the contract in the early hours of the morning, a 6-album deal with Def Jam Records. In that moment, everything shifted. Her life in Barbados, her days in school, all of it faded into the background as she stepped into the next chapter of her life. The next few weeks were a blur of studio sessions, meetings, photo shoots, and preparations. Def Jam wanted to move fast. They released Pon de Replay as her debut single, and from the moment it hit the airwaves, it was a hit. The song gained traction not just in the United States, but internationally. It climbed the Billboard charts with impressive speed and eventually peaked at number 2, held back only by a major comeback single by Mariah Carey. Suddenly, Rihanna was no longer the shy girl from a small island. She was a rising pop artist. She was 17, navigating an adult industry with adult expectations. Some wondered whether she could maintain momentum after such a strong debut. As she began recording her first album, she tapped into a fusion of pop and Caribbean rhythm that felt authentic to her identity. Music of the Sun was a vibrant summery collection that introduced the world to Rihanna's roots. The more she worked, the more comfortable she became. Her voice and her stage presence became stronger. What most people didn't realize was how dramatically fast everything had happened. In just over a year, Rihanna had gone from a schoolgirl performing in front of classmates to standing beside major artists working under the guidance of one of the most influential figures in hip-hop. A girl from Barbados, singing Mariah Carey songs in her bedroom to drown out the noise at home, found herself standing in Def Jam office with JayZ watching her sign her name. And now she's one of the world's biggest pop stars. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me your thoughts down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!